guys, in today's video we are going to discuss the decision element inside of Salesforce Flow. And the decision element is one of the core data elements inside the Flow Builder, and it lets us use if-then logic inside of Flow. So if you're familiar with programming at all, if-then statements are one of the foundational logical operators or control statements that you can use, and inside of a flow we use the decision element to achieve the same outcome. There's a couple benefits, three of which are the ability to control the runtime logic of the flow, so you can determine the order of operations or the sequence of things that happens inside the flow when it's running. And then you can set the decision element to only perform certain actions when other criteria are true. So it's a helpful way to kind of segment the functionality of your flow. And you can also use the decision element to update records when certain changes are made. So I'm going to switch over to Salesforce here, and I have a couple flows set up, and these are all set up to run on the account object. So I have a list of accounts here. And in our first flow that I've built as an example, you can see that it's a screen flow. And this screen flow looks up an account, and then we use a decision to determine what type of account it is. And so the decision is this yellow diamond shaped element, and it has a signpost on it to kind of indicate a decision. In order to bring it to the canvas, all you need to do is just drag it over, and then you can make a new decision element. Why don't we take a look at the existing decision here? So I just called this account type decision, and you can see that there are different outcomes available that I created. So I labeled the first outcome direct, and I am using the resource from our get account to say that this outcome should be executed when the account type equals customer direct. And so the second outcome is channel, and it looks very similar. It's just when the account type equals customer dash channel, then we should outcome this decision, or we should execute this outcome in the decision element. If I wanted to delete an outcome, I certainly could. There's a button here where I could just press delete outcome. And if I wanted to add another outcome, I could just press this plus button and add it back. So because I deleted the channel outcome, I will add it back here. And so I'm just going to manually type in the word channel. I'm going to do channel 2. And so in the decision, we need to define the criteria for the outcome to execute. And we can use custom logic here, but by clicking on the resource section, we get access to all the different things that are available in our flow, like the variables or record variables, as well as screen components or selections made by the user. So here I could select the get account record variable, and I could use any field on this account to inform or influence the condition requirement here. So just like we did before, or just how I had it set up before, I'm going to type in the word type, and we see that the account type field becomes available. So I can click account type, and now the get account dot type is evaluated by the decision, and we can use an operator to determine what value we want it to be. And so I'm going to say equals, but we have the option of does not equal, starts with, ends with, contains, is null, or was set. These are all used in different contexts, but we'll say that the account type equals, and then by clicking this value section, I get access to all the pick list values. So I'll just pick customer-channel and press done. And then I can connect the decision to the screen I want it to go to. Now you see that this automatically filled in the channel outcome. If I didn't have any of the decision outcomes specified, when I connected it to a new element, I would be prompted to select which outcome is being executed to go to that screen. So you can see here I selected direct, and I went to screen 1. If I select channel, I can go to screen 2. And those are the only two outcomes that I defined, either the direct outcome or the channel outcome. Every decision element comes with a default outcome, and this executes when no other outcome is a match for the criteria. So if the flow evaluates the screen elements or the different criteria that you have set up and nothing matches, it'll execute the default outcome. So I could connect that to this screen 3 here and press save. And so why don't we test this out so you can kind of see how it works. Now the way a screen flow works when you're looking up a record is that you need to pass in an account ID. So I can open up this account in Salesforce. I can grab the ID from the URL, and just copy that to my clipboard. And when I pass this ID into the flow, it will look for that account type. And I saw in the list view there that it's customer direct. So the account type is customer direct, and we have the ID here. So when I debug this screen flow, it will ask me for the record ID. So I'll just give the record ID there and press run. And we see over on the right, the debug details show what happened in the flow execution. So the interview started, which is the flow just started, and we passed in the record ID. Our get records element ran, and it looked for the account where the ID of that account matched the record ID that we passed into the flow. And then our decision element executed. And so it evaluated the first outcome, which was direct, and it said, okay, so the get account type, and then it evaluated that, and it says the account type of the record ID that we fed the flow was customer direct, and it was checking. It says, does this outcome or this evaluated field, so does the account type field equal what we're looking for in our decision? And because customer direct does equal customer direct, it executed this condition because it was true. And in our flow, we routed the direct outcome to the first screen here where it says the account type is customer direct. We have a couple other outcomes here. So our second one is that the account type equals customer channel. So if I were to find a different account where it was customer channel, I could open that up, get the account ID, and if we debug the flow again, we should see that when we pass in a different account ID with a different account type, the flow runs, and the account type screen where it says customer channel is the one that gets shown next. And again, we see in the debug details that we find our account successfully based on the ID that we fed the flow, and this time we look at the first outcome in the decision element, and the customer channel does not equal customer direct. So that's not a match, so it skips this one because the conditions weren't met. And then it goes and it executes the second outcome where the account type customer channel equals customer channel, and that's true. And it shows us this screen. And so you can see that our decision element is able to evaluate the fields of a record and then execute an outcome. And if you notice in our debug log here, it always executes in order. So when we're looking at the decision, the first outcome at the top is evaluated first, then the second, and so on down the list. And you can have as many outcomes as you think are necessary for your flow. And that says right here in this help bubble, the flow evaluates outcomes starting from the top and goes all the way down until it finds one whose conditions are met. So in this example, we only have one condition in each decision, or in each outcome, but you could really have as many as you wanted. So we could add another condition here where the account number equals a certain number. We could say 11111, and then you can use logic to do and. So we could have an outcome that both conditions had to be true, or we could change it to say any condition is true, or we could have custom logic where if we wanted to do 1 and 2, or if we wanted to do not 2, like 1 not 2, we could do that. So those are the three logical operators that you get to use with your condition requirements if you have multiple conditions. So that's the first flow I wanted to show you. Close that out. The second flow is identical to the first. It just has a second decision element. So instead of showing us a screen when the account type is direct, it does a lookup. And so we look up an opportunity related to our account, and the opportunity has to have the stage of closed won. And I just want to run that here so you can see another example. So this account is not the direct type, but we could change that. So I'll change this to type direct. And I'm going to grab the account ID here, and in our second flow, we'll go through the logic. So we're going to look up an account whose ID equals the record ID that we pass into the flow. If that account has a type of customer direct, then we're going to go do a lookup. So our decision outcome will do the direct outcome, and it will look up a related opportunity. And we're going to find an opportunity that has the same account ID as our starting record and whose stage is closed won. And then we have a second decision element. So this is a second one, and this is just checking to see if the opportunity was found or not. And if it was found, we see one screen, and if it wasn't found, we see a different screen. So let's test this out by pressing debug. And I can pass in that account ID here and press run. And we see that on the right, our debug log ran, and we got to the screen where it says the account type is customer direct and a closed won opportunity was found. So let's go through the debug details here. We see that we found our account with the same account ID. Our decision evaluated the outcome where it was the direct outcome because the account type that was found by the flow equaled what we specified in our decision element. We then looked for an opportunity that was closed won and related to that account. We successfully found that record. And then our second decision executed, and it said, okay, the get related opportunity is not null. So that get record variable had a value. So it evaluated the path of it having a value, which was yes. If it didn't have a value, it would have gone down to no outcome, and we would have seen a different screen. So that just is showing you that you can have multiple decisions in a flow, and you can see that a user might get a very different flow experience based on the record they're working with. So in one outcome, we're looking up different records, and we get to use all the other data elements to do like one piece of logic. And then we can even further branch out with another decision element. But that only happens when the account type is direct. If we had a different account type, we wouldn't even have any of this other logic fire at all. So that's the power of the decision element. So in our final example here, I'll just save this. Close out some of these other tabs. Leave. I'm showing you a record triggered flow. So this is not a screen flow, but I did want to show you another feature of decision elements that's more recent to the flow builder. So this record triggered flow runs when an account record is updated. I'm just going to press save. And so you can normally specify entry conditions to a flow. You might say, whatever conditions you want, you could specify in the record triggered flow. Assuming that you don't specify any conditions, you can still use a decision element to filter when the flow runs. And so that's what this flow is showing you an example of. So when an account record is updated, no matter what, it's going to run this flow. And then we use a decision element to filter down the updates we want to do based on the account. So you can see here that I have a decision with an outcome labeled yes, and this decision only runs when the account type equals customer direct. And because this is a record triggered flow, we get another option down here, and it says when to execute the outcome. And it says this flow is triggered via a record update, and so the setting allows you to execute the outcome once a specific change happens rather than every time these conditions are true. So if the account type equals customer direct, we can execute this outcome. And you could toggle this, so you could say only if the record that triggered the flow is run to updated, or is run is updated to meet the condition requirements. So this is kind of like if the record is changed to meet this account requirement, then we can run the flow. Otherwise, if it already meets this requirement, then don't run it. And then this top option would just run this decision element every single time. So here I'm going to say only if the record that triggered the flow is run is updated to meet the condition requirement, will we use this decision. So if we update an account and we change that account type to customer direct, this decision will run, and we are going to use this update element on the flow to make an update to the account. And all we're doing here is just setting the active field to yes. And so let's find an account that could trigger this flow. I'll just go back to my account list here. And okay, so there's a sample account. So let's use this Salesforce account. I'll pull up the account ID and we'll debug this flow. Oh, okay, we'll save. And then we'll debug this flow. And so if you notice on the list view there, this Salesforce account doesn't have a type and it is not active. There's no value in the active field and there's no type. So when we debug the flow, if I put in the Salesforce account and then the debug window lets me update different fields, if I come down to the account type, if I can find it on here, and I change this to customer direct, when I run this flow, the active field should change to yes. So we'll press run. We'll see that the flow runs, and in the debug details over here on the right, you can see there are no entry conditions. The flow always runs when an account is updated, and then our decision element evaluates, and it says, is the account type equal to customer direct? And because it is, we ran our update element where we set the active field to yes. And then the flow was running in rollback mode, so it reverted those changes, but it did successfully make that update, and then it finished. So that's it for this video. Those are the different examples of how you can use a decision element. So just to recap, the decision element lets us use if-then logic in a flow, and that allows us to control, the different pieces of logic that we might want to use throughout our flow. Hey guys, hope you found that helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment below with what flow you'd like to see me build next. Check out the link in the description and sign up for my weekly newsletter. I'll share with you one actionable tip that you can take to improve your career or level up your Salesforce skills each week. When you sign up today, I'll share my free guide with you about 10 ways to boost your Salesforce career. These strategies helped me quadruple my income, and they will help you as well. So I hope you sign up, but of course you're free to accept or refuse the offer. With that said, I hope you have a great day.